Okay, this screencast is on the menstrual cycle. Now, this one is probably going to be the longest screencast that I've done so far, probably, but we're going to cover the entire menstrual cycle. So let's review what it is. The menstrual cycle is a cycle of change that is undergone by most female mammals that results in the release of an egg from an ovary and the preparation of the uterine lining for possible implantation of that egg if fertilization occurs and pregnancy. And of course, the return to that initial stage if no implantation is happens. So what I want you to listen for in this is two things, because the menstrual cycle is controlled by 4 hormones. In a short screencast to come, I'll talk about feedback mechanism. I won't do that here. But what I want you to listen for is what's going on. Basically, what are the key stages, the key events in the menstrual cycle, and how do those hormones play into those key events? So really, in this point, we'll do feedback in the next screencast. This is going to be what happens in the stage and what is the function of those hormones in that stage. All right, so let's get out of here and let's go to the smartboard graph. All right, now you're going to have one of these blank ones so that you can label it for your Cornell notebooks as well. Again, blank one so that you can label. All right, do not take one from online, please. All right, so what you're looking at with this graph here, it's actually 4 graphs. All right, you have a graph here, 2, 3, and 4. They're all kind of red in the end together because they all relate to each other. Up on top, you've got 2 hormone graphs, and on the bottom, you've got the key event graphs. All right, so we're going to put those in as we do it. All right, so let's start it off. There are 2 key groups of hormones that both control and coordinate the menstrual cycle. And of course, I have them out of order here because why not? All right, you have the hormones from the pituitary gland, and you have the hormones from the ovary. And what are those hormones? Let's just label them, and then we'll talk about what they do. All right, so luteinizing hormone, maybe you can look at the bottom graph while we're doing it, is labeled in black here. And LH, which is get that out of the way. LH is a term, you can use LH. LH is known as the ovulation hormone. So ovulation is the release of the egg. So if you hook up luteinizing hormone with ovulation, you're 3/4 of the way there. We'll talk about what else it does in context coming up. All right, the next one is follicle stimulating hormone. So again, both of these hormones are produced by the pituitary gland, but work in the ovary. And what is follicle stimulating hormone? A follicle is what a female in the ovary are born with, hundreds of follicles, and every cycle, 12, 13, 14 times a year, one of these eggs in the follicle matures and ovulates. So follicle holds an egg. All right, FSH, just a hormone fun fact, men also release follicle stimulating hormone because sperm cells are the male follicle. All right, so basically follicle, egg, and sperm cells. So FSH is actually the main function is to stimulate the growth of the follicle. So you've got one that's going to stimulate ovulation and one that's going to stimulate the growth of the follicle in the ovary, therefore the growth of the egg. Estrogen is the blue line here. These are the common ones that we always, and progesterone, the green line. Estrogen is the main function of estrogen is to thicken the lining of the uterus. So I might as well label both of these here. So the uterus is this picture down here. So you'll notice it starts off very low, and as the cycle begins and goes through the days, 5 to 27 or so, you have thick lining of a uterus because it's expecting the implantation of a fertilized egg. So estrogen's main function is to both repair the uterus and thicken the lining of the uterus. All right, it has other functions we'll talk about. Progesterone is one of the pregnancy hormones because it is in super high levels during pregnancy. So is estrogen, but a little bit lower. Super high levels during pregnancy. All right, and what does it do? It keeps the endometrium, the uterine lining, thick with blood vessels during pregnancy. So both estrogen and progesterone have functions to thicken the lining of the endometrium, the uterine lining. All right, so let's get these out of the way. We'll start putting these in here. I wanted to get over the follicle development, which gets labeled right here. So you've got two graphs here. They got 4 stages and key events during menstruation. We're going to read through them. So days 1 to 5. Let's put them all in there. Sorry, get that out. Get this in order here. All right. Days 1 to 5. Excuse me. So sorry. Ovulation and the follicle stage. So I'm going to take this out here. Now I have them in order. So sorry. So you have about a 28-day cycle here, about a 28-day cycle. And so I begin here with the menstruation. All right, menstruation could actually begin at the end here. So it could be 5 to 6 days. So you will see graphs that have it begin at about day 27 and carry through to day 5 or so. All right, so many graphs though will go with this. So I'm going to put it here, but be aware of the graph you are reading. The hormone drops here. So what happens during menstruation? So let's say fertilization doesn't occur. If fertilization doesn't occur, this organ, this temporary organ here that you see in yellow, called the corpus luteum, which is generated just in those 13 or 12 days to secrete high levels of estrogen, breaks down. The uterine lining breaks down, and both the uterine lining and the endometrial layer is taken away and eliminated from the body as menstrual blood, otherwise called as a woman's period. Now, the hormone levels here drop so low that actually they're going to actually stimulate the hormones here to start to produce another egg coming up. All right. So menstruation is basically, if you keep it with the sloughing away, the elimination of the body as menstrual blood of the corpus luteum, the unfertilized egg. Now, remember, fertilization occurs. The developing embryo stays in this situation the entire length of the pregnancy, low levels of LH and FSH. Why? Because LH is or ovulation, and FSH stimulates the production of an egg. Excuse me, you don't want either happening during pregnancy. I'm going to cough. Happening during pregnancy. All right, so notice we talk about it if it doesn't happen. All right, so let's go over. So you have menstruation occurring. You have the uterine lining, all right, sort of like, an injury, and an injury needs to be repaired. And that is the job of both FSH, which is going to stimulate the growth, and then FH. So FSH, you get in higher levels of follicle stimulating hormone during the follicle stage, because follicle stimulating hormone is secreted by the pituitary to stimulate the growth of the ovarian follicles. I keep on saying that. All right, estrogen acts on the uterus to stimulate the thickening of the uterine lining. So you see higher levels of estrogen during the follicle stage. You see highest levels of FSH during, except for its peak. All right, day 14, the hormone that acts on it is LH. LH stimulates ovulation, but FSH is actually going to stimulate the LH, all right, and then go rapidly down. All right, so LH, ovulation right in the middle. So peaking right before the 14th day or so. All right, release of the egg. Then you go to the luteal phase. The luteal phase, again, the ruptured follicle develops or slowly develops into what's called a corpus luteum. The corpus luteal's function is to secrete high levels of progesterone, as you can see by the green there, and lower levels of estrogen, because it's anticipating a pregnancy. All right? Estrogen and progesterone act on the continued development and keeping the uterine lining thick, okay, in preparation for pregnancy. All right? And meanwhile, all right, we'll talk about what's going to happen with this graph with the feedback mechanism coming in. All right, so that concludes this screencast of the key functions, key events, and key hormones of